We welcome you to Iowa City for the 2017-18 Telenet UCI Cyclo-cross World Cup. It is known locally as Jingle Cross here in Iowa City. I'm Steve Schlanger with the six-time U.S. national champion Tim Johnson. That is not him there. I believe this young fellow has probably only won 3 or 4 so far in his young career. TJ is to my right, and Tim, the best riders in the sport have gathered here in East Central Iowa, right in the middle of the American heartland for the season opener of the World Cup. The top names in the sport right there on that start line.
And here we have Michael Van Toornhout starting off. He was third position at the first big race of the year, the Jingle Cross in Cyclo. Next to him, Tom Musen from Belgium. He is really no stranger to North America. He's come here a couple times and has really enjoyed his time, but I think he's looking for a big result in today's race. That is our current world champion, Wout van Aert, winner of last year's event, really going away, but he will have his hands full with Mathieu van der Poel joining him for the first time here. There's Laurens Sweeck, winner of the C1 on Friday. He is a rider who's really on form. You know, he was also up there in Cyclo, but he's going to be looking for a big result. Kevin Powell's, he is really one of the riders who's been around for so many years now and always fighting for that front race, front group. Mathieu van der Poel, truly the hottest prospect in the sport of cyclocross right now, dipping into mountain bike throughout the summer to get ready for this year. Corne van Kessel, the Dutch rider here for Fidea, showing up with quite a few teammates ready to do battle. And the final rider, Marcel Meissen, the German national champion, he's going to be looking for a good result. You know, watching these racers trying to decide what races they're going to do, how they're going to prepare for this Sunday afternoon event, whether or not they're going to race on Friday night or Saturday night. They've really done a good job of splitting that. Only 2 riders really have not raced so far this weekend, and that is Wout van Aert and Mathieu van der Poel. So we will be treated to a big show and see how those riders are ready for it.
This is always one of the most critical aspects of the entire race, the start, the battle for position. That's why the top riders in the sport are positioned there at the front as they all look to get that pole position to drive this race.
Fairly clean start for most of the riders, being led up by Mathieu van der Poel. He's got Musen right behind him, Laurens Sweeck, as well as Wout van Aert and Stephen Hyde going very, very wide, carrying that speed into the first corner. A bit of a tough start for Corne van Kessel, front row rider, missing a pedal. Now he's buried deep into that group. It's like we have the 2 lines again. You have to choose, do I go high or do I go low? Sweeck up high, looks like he's going to make the most of that, but Van der Poel still on the front, in control of this race. It's really great to see all these national champions. You see the red, blue, and white here of the Netherlands with Van der Poel. You've got Musen just behind him. I see Marcel Meissen up there, world champion. We have Pan Am champion and U.S. national champion Stephen Hyde solidly in the top 10. Great start for him.
And Tim, let's go through some of the key sections of what is a very demanding course here in Iowa City.
So that first bottleneck really sets you up for this part of the course, which is the beginning of the ascent of Mount Crumpet. These 2 barriers here looking very easy for these riders as they hit it at speed, but this is the start of an incredibly steep climb. If you mess this up, if you are forced to get off of your bike and run, you will really lose some space. Mathieu van der Poel making quick work of this, but I can tell you that it is far steeper and slower for everyone else on course. But you can see Ili Iserbyt having a hard time. He has to get off and run. That is a very tough part of this course. Going directly into the sand section, Van der Poel, clear shot at this. He is going to just rip across the sand section.
A 230-foot-long sand pit coming at the base of the first of 2 times up what is known as Mount Crumpet here on the Jingle Cross course. Oh, and a rider goes down. First man we've seen hit the deck here on the first lap. That is Corne van Kessel of the Netherlands.
So just adding to that tough start, Van Kessel having the tough beginning of the race, just getting into his pedals, now hitting the deck after the sand section. You know, I was thinking as we saw those riders exit the sand, really everyone's worst nightmare is seeing this rider, Mathieu van der Poel, with a gap on the first lap. This is something that none of the other riders want to have happen because he is showing up so dominant and really giving the riders nothing but a chance to look at him right away from them. So this is a very tough start for all the other racers. They're really going to have to get together and try and make this first lap work for them.
Now going back up Mount Crumpet. They go up this climb twice, but they go up the mountain from 2 different directions. And it's the second descent that is the most treacherous that we will see shortly. As moving up on the right-hand side of the rainbow jersey is the reigning world champion, Wout van Aert, also the defending champion from this race in Iowa City a year ago. And another look at the fall from Van Kessel just a few moments ago.
So there is a rock kind of buried in that right-hand turn. A lot of the riders have seen that over the last couple nights. I know Corne Van Kessel did race, but looks like Jeremy Jern having a hard time getting around that bottleneck there. But so this is the descent off the top of Mount Crumpet. And this switchback section, you've got a very tough left and a very hard right-hand turn before a fast descent that is treacherous to say the least. Big consequence if you do make a mistake. We saw Katie Compton have a hard time and possibly injure herself on that descent just a few minutes ago in the women's race, but these riders going very, very quickly. You see Quentin Ehrman's in second place. He showed a very good result on Friday night, riding at the front of the race in second position for much of that night. You know, really showing up with good form, but Mathieu van der Poel hopping these barriers. This is something that is unique to cyclocross, where you are presented with barriers that either force you to get off, or if you have the skill, you can actually bunny hop. And this is something that, you know, 5 years ago, you never saw the top 20 riders all bunny hop a set of barriers like that. So this has really come about only in the last couple of years, and really being forced to do it by someone so dominant as Wout van Aert or Mathieu van der Poel, who all can bunny hop now, and it really forces that pace to continue to stay high.
It is a 3.1 kilometer course, just about 2 miles here in Iowa City. And we will see how many laps the riders end up doing. They wait for about 10 to 15 minutes before they determine the exact number of laps and let the riders know. What they try to do is have the total race time come in at just over 1 hour in total length. Van der Poel still out front, trying to stretch his lead. Herman's in second. In fourth there, the reigning world champion, Wout van Aert. And a single file line of riders, all congested right next to one another. Biggest daylight we have is from our leader back to second place.
A lot of power being put down into the ground by Mathieu van der Poel. You know, not knowing how he's been riding this course. I did hear that he had a bit of an issue in the warm-up laps earlier. He had a crash and was on the ground just briefly. Turns out he might have gone up against some of the course marking into the course fencing here. So he's definitely one to push the limits, whether it's uphill or downhill, trying to just get every second out of this course.
Now there are 19 Belgians in this race overall, and 9 of them are stacked up in places 2 through 10 right now in the standings, as Van der Poel is the first to start out on lap number 2 here. And then it's Hermans and Van Torenhout. Sweck rounds out the top 5. Wout van Aert, our defending champion, also there in the first 5. Stephen Hyde of the U.S., the national cyclocross champion of the United States, just outside the top 10 in 11th place at the end of lap 1.
Some of the riders that were missing in that front group would be Lars van der Haar. He's the Dutch rider on Telenet UCI, who I expect to have a better start. You know, he's known for getting hole shots and being at the front. He's going to have to fight some traffic to get back into that large group. You know, we did talk about Stephen Hyde being in that group. Good start for him. Not a good start for Justin Lindeen. This is a rider who's raced the last couple nights at the other events supporting this World Cup here at Jingle Cross. Looks like he has had a mechanical issue.
And now back to our leader, Mathieu van der Poel. This is the third of 3 days of racing at this Jingle Cross weekend, but the only World Cup event for the men. First of 9 World Cups altogether this season on the 2017-18 Telenet UCI Cyclo-cross World Cup calendar. And now back up Mount Crumpet, and it is Van der Poel going to ride the whole way. Leading this group, world champion Wout van Aert.
You know, Steve, one thing you're not seeing by this camera angle is that this is a really rutted uphill. There are footsteps that have been worn into that ground from previous races, including last year's event in the mud, that the riders have to get up and over. There's not a lot of traction. I think we're watching some of incredible skills by these riders to make it look that easy. Believe me, it is not as easy as it looks.
Well, the weather did change overnight. For the last week, it was hot, humid, dry, and dusty. Temperature just yesterday in the low to mid 90s, but then rain showers overnight, softening the course, also cooling things off. It's pleasant and in the mid 70s as they race today. How is that going to affect things as the race unfolds?
Well, I can tell you that a lot of the riders aren't used to this kind of heat at all. You know, they might have been racing on the road, racing on the mountain bike if you're Mathieu van der Poel. 90 plus is something that not a lot of riders are used to when they think of cyclocross. So it was difficult the last few days. I think everyone was happy to hear about the rain coming, waking up this morning and finding out that the dirt had been wet down a little bit more traction. You know, a lot of the riders changed tire pressures, they changed tire treads. You know, I think someone like Mathieu van der Poel in the front, because tire pressure is so important, you have to do laps out there to decide what you're going to use in the race. You know, you might be able to change during, but once you make that decision, it really is something that will play in your mind and how you approach the race. Mathieu van der Poel obviously feeling a lot of confidence in his tire selection and tire pressure.
Laurens Sweeck there in the red has moved up into second place. Sweeck, the Belgian, won the race on Friday night, which was not a World Cup event, but still featured some of the same riders participating in today's World Cup race.
There's that fast descent into that right-hand corner where Katie Compton had a problem earlier, but these switchbacks are very tough. It's a very steep descent. It takes a lot of commitment to get around these corners, trying to find that traction. You can see some of the issues as they fight the bike. You know, it's always bouncing. You know, these are road bikes, basically, Steve. They're bikes that are meant to be riding on the road, but they're modified to be better on these conditions, but they still have no suspension whatsoever. You know, someone like Van der Poel who does race mountain bikes, he's used to having suspension to help in situations like this, jumping up and over these barriers, but it takes the rider themselves to be that suspension. Their arms, their legs, they always have to be moving, trying to absorb what they're riding over and get ready for something like this. Sweeck now bunny hopping again at speed. He's got a bit of a gap in second position.
Mathieu van der Poel opening up a lead of 13 seconds on just lap number 2. Here he is out front. How surprised are you that he has created this kind of daylight?
I think anyone involved in the sport is just looking at this like Van der Poel now. Last year he had a knee injury. He had to miss more than a month of the season. He missed the first few World Cups. This kind of performance, really, people are just so shocked. You know, Wout van Aert was dominant last year. He won so many races at the beginning of the season. You know, even this year, starting off in second position behind Van der Poel, this is their biggest fear. You know, is this going to continue for the whole season, or is this just this part of the season? I don't know. I think we're looking at someone who's going to be world champion many times to come in the sport of cyclocross.
A world champion in 2015. European champion on 2 occasions at the junior level. Also a promising road racer too. And here is bib number 1, rainbow jersey of world champion Wout van Aert. Won this race last year as we documented, and also had some issues in that race that he had to overcome, so it's not like He went out front early and just held his position, had to deal with some adversity, a mechanical problem, fought his way back to the front, but now is he in trouble already?
You know, I think that someone like Wout van Aert is trying to make the most of this race. You know, if he has lost the wheel of Van der Poel this early, he might not want to risk everything to get back to it. He might be playing the long game. He might be trying to come back more in 40 minutes in, as opposed to now, just 13 minutes into the race, finishing up lap 2.
And Van der Poel, the 22-year-old, is the first to start lap number 3. Let's see how big his margin will be as the others follow him.
Sweeck with a little bit of daylight. He's got Quentin Hermans and looks like Michael Van Toorn out there trying to fight for who's going to take that pole. Wout van Aert solo here coming across the line. Kevin Powell's leading that group again. It's got Dan Soita from Telenet UCI. Looks like Van der Haar is making a move back up to that front group. It's going to be a little bit late as his countryman has definitely flown the coop already.
Well, it's a 17-second lead right now for Mathieu Van der Poel. After 2 laps, his lead is growing. They're not catching him at the moment. He is building on his advantage.
You know, a lot of the riders, as a peer, you want to consider yourself up to the task. You know, can I beat this person? Yes, you know, I'm lining up. I have every chance of winning, just like he does. I don't hear that as much when people talk about Mathieu Van der Poel. They are kind of whispering like, you know, wow, he's so good. You know, he's so strong. He's winning so powerfully. You don't really hear that so much. Cyclocross is different because you essentially get boiled down to a single rider against another. Even though you have groups like this, it is all about that individual effort. And right now, Mathieu Van der Poel is putting on a show as that individual at the front of this race.
And Sweeck, second on course, just riding out of frame. Herman's next. And this big group here battling for third. That is Herman's in the dark colors, followed in the white and the rainbow jersey by our reigning world champion, Wout van Aert. So Sweeck looking strong and like perhaps the only one who at some point may challenge Mathieu Van der Poel here today.
Yeah, it's just a matter, you know, you go.
Some separation being created in the groups behind as well, not as congested as it was in the opening laps.
Yeah, this pace is just so fast, Steve. I think that we're looking at a lap time now. 6:29 is the fastest lap of the day. You know, we saw that in the women's race, it was well over 7 minutes, and a lot of the riders were fairly similar. We're looking at a solid 16-second difference between the fastest lap of Mathieu Van der Poel versus Lawrence Sweeck. That's just incredible. Small slip out from Van der Poel at the top of this climb. This is the second time up Mount Crumpet before descending down that really tough descent. So a lot of the riders now getting into the groove of this climb. Even though we did see that small mistake from Van der Poel, I think that he's going to feel fairly confident about cresting ahead of Sweeck here. Sweeck taking a look over his right-hand shoulder at Quentin Hermans, just hammering up there. He's the Telenet UCI rider on the yellow bicycle, wearing the black and yellow, just ahead of Wout van Aert in the rainbow jersey.
So it's Van der Poel, followed by Sweeck in second, Hermans third, Van Aert fourth, then Sotta closing out the top 5, but Belgians in position 2nd through 8 right now, with the rider Mathieu Van der Poel leading the way overall.
Slightly different technique there, Steve. Lawrence Sweeck now, he's riding in the drops. He has his hands low down on the handlebars, trying to find that traction, while Van der Poel is really just sitting up on the hoods, almost taking a casual approach to ripping down this descent, making it look so easy. A lot of the riders, you can see in their body posture and their speed just how seriously they're taking this descent, but Van der Poel making it look very, very simple for him.
Now the gap out to 22 seconds now from Van der Poel in first to Sweik in second. A lot of very good riders over half a minute back. And remember, this is just lap number 3. A convincing early performance by the 22-year-old Dutch rider, Mathieu Van der Poel. His lead growing. Sweik a solo second, leading the strong Belgian contingent. Dominating top 10 placings, but not the one they covet the most, which is the leading spot. That belongs to Mathieu Van der Poel. World champion in 2015. Also won the Junior Road Championship in Florence, Italy 4 years ago. Hermans in third. And in fourth place, Wout van Aert. There are 4 riders battling for fourth place at the moment. And again, that second place, Laurens Sweik.
It looks like Hermans is closing on Sweik there. He's going to hopefully make contact on a climb, maybe finishing of this climb going into the woods. But even then, he still has to try and maintain that position. Wout van Aert leading this group of chasers. Got another Telenet UCI, a teammate of Hermans there just behind him, as well as the Marlix Napoleon riders, Powels and Van Torenhout. But those riders, you know, something about cyclocross, Steve, that's important to note is that teamwork can be a part of it, but the drafting, unlike road racing, it doesn't last that long. You know, we're not talking about a 5-kilometer section where you can get up to speed and use the power of the draft and teammates to chase back a group. You know, these sections are only 20, 30 seconds long before you have to go right back into another turn or another tough feature on the course.
7 laps now left to go for our leader, Mathieu Van der Poel, just crossing the finish line once again to start his 4th lap of the day. Here's Laurens Sweik. He'll make this right-hand turn and then hit that finishing straight. Let's see how far back he is. Over 20 seconds at last check. 26 seconds. Now from first to second place, Quentin Hermans just 5 seconds out of the second spot, right now in third, and then this big group just behind, led by Wout van Aert. Battling for positions inside the top 10. So again, this is lap number 4 of what they're calling 10 altogether. And they have decided 10 is the magic number to get the riders just over the 1 hour mark today in Iowa City. Second year in a row, this Iowa City race, known as Jingle Cross here in the Midwest, has been a World Cup event. First of 9 World Cups this season, the second of which will be next week in Waterloo, Wisconsin, just outside of Madison. Van der Poel up Mount Crumpet once again.
The camera's really having a hard time keeping up with Van der Poel as he is really creating such a big gap over that chase group that he's almost, you know, really riding on another planet. This chase group still being led by Van Aert in 4th position on the road. Really hoping to catch up, but you know, this climb is so much harder than it looks right now. See Hermans doing that quick bunny hop over these 2 planks at the bottom and then trying to hammer out this thing, keeping that traction, keeping the power down, trying not to really nuke yourself before a tough section like the sand or even the second time up Mount Crumpet.
Well, it looks like this group is starting to get a little closer to Hermans there in 3rd place. So certainly a legitimate competition for places 2, 3, and 4 right now, but this man creating no competition out front. He's leaving everybody behind, Mathieu Van der Poel.
Yeah, the way that Laurens Sweik there in 2nd position won that race on Friday night, he was dealing with a couple of chasers, including Quentin Hermans, including Lars van der Haar, that were trying to get him back. You know, cyclocross is all about trying to create and maintain speed throughout these corners and difficult sections of the course. And Swake was looking over his shoulder with a gap. I mean, I see Van der Poel doing the same thing, but his gap right now is so large that he's now just on autopilot, trying to make the right choices, trying to be in the right gear at the right time, trying not to lose traction, while Swake is really going to have to keep after what Quentin Ehrmans is doing right behind him. He's definitely closing that gap down.
Did the group make a mistake in your estimation to let Mathieu van der Poel get away so early, or do you think there was nothing they could do about it? There's
almost nothing they can do about it. When a rider gets a hole shot, you know, being first off the start line and first into that beginning part of the race, you know, the first corner, it's something that's really hard to fight against, you know. And when it is the fastest rider with the most ability to win, then you have even less to do about it. It's something that's, like I said, is a big fear of riders racing against Mathieu van der Poel right here, is to give him even an inch. It's the first time
Van Torenhout may have passed Hermans to move into third.
It's the first time we've seen a rider from the Marlow X Napoleon Games there be at the front of that chase group. He's trying to make a difference and get back up to the Ehrmans Swake group.
So Mathieu van der Poel still with a very healthy lead. Now at just about half a minute. The lead has been growing each and every lap.
Saw a quick little gesture from Van der Poel into the pits. A rider has a pit crew, and they have spare bikes and spare equipment, including wheels and anything that would happen to the bicycle. You can get it done in that pit zone. It's also a bit of coaching that goes on. So Van der Poel was making a motion towards his pit crew, either saying, I'm doing great, or maybe change the tire pressure, or, you know, maybe I feel like I'm getting a flat. I mean, it's something that would happen to any of these riders at any time, and having that ability to communicate to your pit crew is something you take that moment. I need to say this to them because the next time through, I might need to change my bike.
All has to be done very fluidly as well. Don't want to concede much time. They're now calling it a 23-second gap from Van der Poel back to Swake in second, Hermans third, Van Torenhout fourth, and Sota in fifth. But a big group there, clustered between positions third and about seventh or eighth. Now the battle for second place here. Swake with Hermans just behind him. So Hermans riding well to get up to the back of Swake, who had created some separation earlier. Wout van Aert losing a few spots. Wout van Aert slipping back, can't hold the wheel in front of him. He's number one in the rainbow jersey. This is second and third, Swake and Hermans, but still over 20 seconds behind this rider at the front, Mathieu van der Poel.
Taking a look at how Wout van Aert is looking on the bike, you know, something you can notice from the outside is whether or not a rider looks like they're comfortable pushing on the pedals in a transition zone into or out of a corner. And it does look like Wout van Aert is having a hard time. You know, we call it having heavy legs. We call it having, you know, a little bit like you're blocked. Like you don't really feel like you've got what you need at the moment. And Wout van Aert, current world champion, winner of last year's event here, does not look like he's got the legs that he really wants to fight against someone like Van der Poel.
So Van der Poel out onto his fifth of 10 laps now. Here's second and third, Hermans and Swake. And they are still 22, 23 seconds behind. So really not gaining any ground, just about holding their margin right now for a time that did slip back to close to the half-minute mark, but still over 20 seconds for them as they begin lap 5. The others here well over half a minute out, including world champion Wout van Aert, Toon Aerts, Van Torenhout, 41 seconds down. Another batch of riders coming in close to 1 minute back, including Stephen Hyde in 14th place, the U.S. champion. And Van der Poel now in the pits there.
So it looks like that communication with his pit crew meant to say, the next time through, I need a new bike because something is wrong. Taking a look at the lap times, we have seen a drop in time. So it looks like the last time through, Mathieu Van der Poel gave up more than 10 seconds compared to his best lap times. And that tells me that he had a problem. He had a tire pressure issue or even some other more substantial issue. But now that he's on a fresh bike, even though they are set up almost identically, it does feel a little bit different, and you need a little bit of time to get used to it, but he is making quick work of this tough climb.
Interesting to note, though, it may have slowed the lap time, but he didn't concede much time to the chasers behind. And that would be Hermans here and Sweet in second and third.
Herman's looking really good now in second place. He's caught Swake. He's gone around him. Looks like he is feeling very comfortable on this course. And you know, if you get a sniff of something happening to another rider, even if you hear it from a spectator, you know, Van der Poel switched a bike, or you know, he looks like he's got a flat, it gives you a little bit more of a chance to do something about it, and you might step up your game a little. Looks like Hermans is trying to do that right now.
Back of that group, Jens Adams of Belgium. Oh, you see a rider going down here just as Wout van Aert's passed by.
That
narrow
is
corner.
Lars van der Haar right there, hitting the ground. You know, crashing like that. These corners, Steve, are dried grass. They're flat. They look very, very easy, but when you take them at speed, if that traction leaves you, you find yourself on the ground about as fast as we just saw Van der Haar do.
Van der Poel still pulling away after the crash of Lars van der Haar, the 26-year-old Dutch rider. Van der Haar, a world champion at the under-23 level on 2 different occasions. Also European champion from 2 seasons ago, but one of 2 riders we've seen go down so far here today in this men's race in Iowa City. Hermans ahead of Swake, second and third place behind Mathieu Van der Poel.
Van der Poel looking like he's taking this a little bit easier. I feel like he's starting to think of consolidating his lead instead of building it. He put in a couple very, very fast laps. Now he's looking like he's taking this a little bit easier, not quite hanging every single shred of chance out there, just in case he were to make a crash. I know that he is known for taking those chances and really pushing it. And a lot of the riders, and especially the people that are really tight to the cyclocross community in Europe, they view him as someone who has this incredible talent, but also a skill set to match. And that's something that he's known for, riding his mountain bike, going, you know, hitting the jump park, also riding dirt bikes. I mean, he is definitely a guy that is very much at home on 2 wheels.
Still pretty much holding his advantage, 21 seconds over Hermans and Swake. Halfway through this race in Iowa City. The opener of the 2017-18 Telenet UCI Cyclo-cross World Cup campaign. Well, a lot of riders completely out of it here. It's just halfway through, and you see the gesture there by the right hand of the world champion Wout van Aert. What was he not happy about?
So I think that he had a problem with his bike right there, but it was happening either directly after the entrance to the pit or maybe even at the exit of the pit. In cyclocross, there are 2 yellow flags on the pit lane, and if you have a problem in between those flags, you can actually go into the pit and get it fixed. But after that exit, you're really out of luck, and you have to continue on until the next time you hit the pit. So it's really unfortunate for anyone to have a problem. Let's hope that Van Aert doesn't have a major issue, and he was having more of a communication with his pit crew there.
Quentin Hermans, the 22-year-old Belgian, European under-23 champion 2 years ago. Also won the bronze medal in the under-23 event at the World Championships 2 seasons ago. Oh, Vanderpool, little slip.
Something I see that's happening right now, Steve, is that the course is really drying out. We saw at the beginning of the women's race, it was still fairly tacky. It was still fairly moist from the overnight rains, and it started to dry out throughout their race. During the warm-up laps of the men's race, I saw a lot of riders talking about tire pressure and how they were going to deal with it. Now that it's been 30 minutes into this elite men's race, it is definitely drying out. You see how Lars van der Haar crashed, Vanderpool having a slip out. It makes sections like this seem a lot more difficult than they were even just 10 or 15 minutes ago.
Now Mathieu van der Poel out onto lap number 6 now. Sweeck and Hermans starting their 6th lap and still 23 seconds behind. Race over a half-hour old. Now the primary story is no one really challenging Mathieu van der Poel whatsoever, and I mean from the opening lap, he has not had a legitimate competitor. Very strong performance by him.
It's like a move by Boros here through the start-finish line. He's, Czech champion. He really wants to get up there. A top 10 in a World Cup is a great result for any of these riders, even though they can hear the announcers talk about, or maybe even their pit crew say about Van der Poel being so far off the front. They're still fighting for a result. They still want to make this trip to the U.S. something worth it.
Only 9 of these races all season. They have this opener in Iowa City, next week in Waterloo, Wisconsin, which is just outside of Madison, and then it's over a month until the next race in mid-October in Europe.
I think they do that to let the weather change a little bit, cool it down a little.
And this was the little slip that we saw from Van der Poel earlier. Didn't really cost him too much, it didn't seem.
Yeah, that's what we call a good save. A rider who can be that dynamic and jump and keep themselves from hitting the deck. That is really a tough move to do. Really good shot of the pit there, Steve. That is where all the action is. So many of these riders have the support staff that they need. Multiple bikes set up almost exactly the same. Maybe even a different tire selection or tire pressure ready to go just in case something were to happen. If you have a favorite bike, you're going to try not to have that in the pit. You want to start on that, but you want your second or third bike in there ready to go for anything else to happen.
Still mashing away. Also illustrates just how difficult it is in this sport, if you fall behind, to catch up and somehow pass riders that are this strong.
Yeah, this is a really insurmountable thing that Sweeck and Quentin Hermans are trying to figure out. It's one thing to put together fast laps. It's another thing to fight against another rider. These two really are trying to beat each other and get that position. But they don't want to let this rider, Mathieu van der Poel, get too much of a gap. But right now, they're holding that gap steady at 23 seconds, and that's really how it's been the last couple laps. The biggest gap that we saw Van der Poel have was 26 seconds over Sweeck. So now that they're holding that at 23, I think that's a time that Van der Poel is comfortable with. He knows where he can make up time. He knows where he feels strong. Now that he has his bike situation figured out, he's definitely looking fairly confident in the next few minutes of this race.
Is there ever much of an issue with someone like Van der Poel going out too strong and not having enough energy left towards the back end of the race?
Well, this is where we talk about mere mortals and Van der Poel. So, any other rider who's known for a fast start, someone like Lars van der Haar there on the left of the screen, you expect them to start out very, very fast and then kind of, settle down. Van der Poel, what we saw was an incredibly fast start, but he just continued to build, not just for the first lap, but for the first 3. That's something really special.
Sweik ahead of Hermans there on the descent of Mount Crumpet. Now Van der Poel is at a bike change, a little slip in the corner, but look at this. His lead continues to swell. Now over half a minute, 32 seconds to second and third place. So are these two right here, Sweik and Hermans, who are in second and third, are they thinking, all right, let's battle it out for the final two spots on the podium instead of thinking about somehow trying to catch Van der Poel?
Yeah, they can hope and they can pray that they're going to catch Van der Poel, but right now they're trying to stay ahead of that big chase group because landing on the podium is a lot better than trying to fight for the scraps. Those two riders, yes, they want to beat each other, but they also understand the value of that podium spot. So being in second and third with a gap over fourth position, those two are really trying to lay down these laps to stay ahead of that big group.
Next time around, it'll be 4 laps left to go for Mathieu van der Poel, number 20, our Dutch leader.
Up and over that stairs section into that quick little descent. Looks like Hermans had a little bit of an issue. You know, he gets off and you try and get off as close to that stair as you can at speed, and once you start to get into this part of the race, more than 30 minutes, your sense of place is always something difficult to find, as we see Van der Poel actually catching a lap rider. But you know, you might find yourself making small mistakes that have a big consequence. Hermans luckily able to save that before having an issue on the stairs.
Mentioned before how Van der Poel twice won the Junior Cyclo-cross World Championships. The first was in Koksijde of Belgium back in 2012, a legendary cyclocross venue. The next was a year later here in the U.S. when he won in Louisville in 2013. So he's had success here in the U.S. before and having a lot of success today. Starts his next lap, 4 to go, and a big lead over these two, Sweik and Hermans in second and third. Laurens Sweik in second place, coming off the win on Friday night on this course. Over many of the same riders he's competing against today, but very different conditions on Friday to what they've had here this afternoon.
A couple more issues in that larger chase group. Looks like two had broken off and making a bit of a charge, but slipping out. You see Boros here trying to catch back up. That was him who had the small slip out. Van der Haar now has moved up and made up for his slow start. He's starting that front straight, trying to keep away from Boros.
And it is Van der Haar ahead of Boros just by a second in fourth and fifth as they start their next lap. And this is the group here. The world champion Wout van Aert. But 37 seconds between Mathieu van der Poel out front and Hermans and Sweik in second and third.
You know, I think we noticed something there. A rider we don't see in that group is Wout van Aert.
Yeah, Wout van Aert has slipped. He has slipped a little further back now.
So the riders we saw come through in that chase group, you know, after Lars van der Haar was able to go through, Kevin Powles was making a counterattack in that group, followed by Toon Aerts and Vermeersch and so on. What we don't see is Wout van Aert, so he is not in there right now. And we're going to try and get an idea on where he is on course. Looks like he might be coming onto the start-finish line right here. So that is
him in the white.
A big, big fall for Wout van Aert to slip this far back at this point in the race.
Yeah, that's him right there. Over 2 minutes down as he crosses the line.
So we'll see if he's had a crash or a mechanical, but that's definitely Wout van Aert out of contention today.
It looked earlier, even though he was never battling Mathieu van der Poel for the lead, like he was strong enough to be among the front groups. He then started to fade somewhat, but this is a big drop from where we saw him last.
Yeah, this is not something that he's familiar with. You know, able to win this race last year, even though he had those mechanical issues he was fighting it with, and had so much success throughout the last season. You know, even this year, the first race out in Eeklo, the Brico race was, he was second position. Mathieu van der Poel here was the clear winner, but he was really riding well. So I don't think it's a question about legs. I'm afraid that something has happened, either mechanical or a crash.
Now, Wout van Aert celebrated his 23rd birthday just this past Friday, 2 days ago, here in Iowa City. And not having a great World Cup opener today, and Mathieu van der Poel stealing the show today. Hermans and Sweeck still in second and third position. And looking pretty comfortable in those slots right now. Big gap back to fourth, fifth, and the rest.
Let's take a look at van der Poel on this descent here. Really, his technique is different than other riders. He's got his feet level around all these corners. His body is completely off of his bike. He's got his hands on the hoods. This is someone who feels incredibly confident in how their bike is going to ride and how it's going to react to these bumps. This is a very, very tough course. We are looking at someone who's creating this ability to ride that not many other riders have ever been able to do. I think that he has matched an incredible engine with a skill set that we haven't seen before.
And that's really what this sport is all about. It's not that complicated. You see a lot of different features on the courses, but when it comes to excelling, it's pretty straightforward.
Well, you have to be able to do almost everything very, very well. And I think he's doing everything incredibly well. He's exceptional right now. And not just good on the cyclocross courses, but also has proven his ability on the road as well. Won a stage at the Tour of Belgium earlier this year. It's always a very competitive race in professional road cycling. And that event, that stage was one of the things spoken about through, conversations with these other Europeans that are here visiting in Iowa. I believe that was up against Philippe Gilbert, who's, former world champion in road racing. And it was almost a straight up sprint, and he was able to win it. That doesn't happen for a young rider just wetting their feet in professional road racing. This guy is truly a talent.
42 seconds is his lead. It continues to go up by a few seconds each lap. Basically, throughout this entire race, he has been extending his margin over the others. They're not railing him in. He's putting them away. Hermans and Sweeck still second and third. For a guy like Laurens Sweeck, who, as I mentioned, won on Friday on this course, obviously got the confidence of that victory, but in much different conditions. It was at night, under the lights, after a hot, humid, dusty day, and racing today, even though it's been drying out after rain showers last night.
The Friday night race was Category 1, so there were a lot of points and some good money up for grabs, but it was a race that was thought of, oh, you know what, Wout van Aert and van der Poel are not here, so here is a chance for the other riders to really excel. Winning that race, I think, for Laurens Sweeck solidified his place. He is a rider who's been playing in that front group. He's been out front, top 3, 45 minutes into a race. And then beaten by someone like Van Aert or van der Poel. But winning that race on Friday was definitely a great way for him to show that he's ready to go for Sunday, and it's up to the other riders to beat them. Quinn Hermans also having a good race on Friday. He's one of the big talents in Belgian cyclocross who has grown up through the Telenet UCI team, just like Wout van Aert did earlier. So he's a rider that I expect to see collect some wins, as he grows into his position in the sport.
Mathieu van der Poel just starting his next lap. 3 to go now for the 22-year-old. Quinten Hermans, Laurens Sweeck coming up next. And it's going to be over 40 seconds for these two. Call it 43 even. At this rate, if it continues in this direction, van der Poel is going to win this race by over 50 seconds.
And that's very unusual to see. You see Kevin Powell's taking a drink. Some of the riders starting with a water bottle cage with a bottle on hand. You know, something that's different about the sport of cyclocross is they don't allow feeding. You are more than willing or more than able to take water on board with you, but you have to carry that weight. If there is a section where you have to put your bike on your shoulder, you know, you're going to have that water bottle in the way. But the leader here, Mathieu van der Poel, has a bottle on his bike. Really unusual to see some of these European riders do that. I think it has a lot to do with the way the calendar has gone. A lot of these big races now, you know, we see these 2 World Cups in the U.S. happen in September. Traditionally, the beginning of the European cyclocross season was the first week of October, and it's kind of, you know, inched earlier and earlier in the year. Same with the U.S. You know, we have a full schedule where races start at the very beginning of September and continue all the way, you know, into December, January. The European schedule going even farther than that into late February.
Here comes Wout van Aert now. Across the line to start his next lap. Look how far back he is. 2 minutes, 19 seconds. Just ahead of the U.S. champion, Stephen Hind, who's in 20th place. Now, certainly not what Van Aert nor much of this crowd probably expected. You got the reigning world champion and defending champion of this race from last year over 2 minutes off the lead.
Well, for a rider like Stephen Hind, top 20 in a World Cup is always a good result. You know, he was able to crack the top 10 last year, something he does want to do again. But for Wout van Aert, you're right. You know, rolling across the line in 19th place with just 3 laps to go is something unusual for him.
Swank and Hermans, one not losing the other. This could be quite an interesting battle for second place when it comes down to it, provided things stay the way they are. Likely to come down to some kind of a sprint down that finishing straight unless one drops the other at some point, maybe on the final lap.
Steve, I'll try and put some numbers to what we're seeing on screen. You know, this is a climb where a rider, you know, when we talk about wattage, a rider like Mathieu van der Poel, when he goes uphill, he's probably doing 700-800 watts when he stands up and really goes for it. You know, Quentin Hermans and Warner Swank chasing alongside are also hitting those numbers over and over again. We're talking about more than an hour of racing where they're going to average above 400 watts when you take away the zeros. When we watch the Tour de France on a big mountain climb, you know, they're lucky to be able to do that, you know, for an extended period of time. But in cyclocross, it's all about the spikes. They might hit 1,000 watts 20 times during this race. They might hit 800 watts 30 or 40 times. It's really all about going as hard as you can and then taking the rest where you have a chance to.
Going to be 2 laps left to go when Van der Poel comes around next time to the start-finish area.
Seeing more gaps on this climb. You know, the heat has really started to build. You see the zipper completely open for Van der Poel. He is starting to feel that. A lot of the riders having a hard time with that temperature change. As we talked about at the beginning of the show, Steve, it was very pleasant and nice this morning with a little bit of the rain overnight, but now it's gotten hotter and hotter and hotter out there. These riders, 2 to go, it's going to feel like, you know, 30 minutes for them out there.
And for Van der Poel, this is really just about managing his effort and the course the rest of the way.
He's continuing to do a solid lap time. You know, his last lap was his second slowest, actually. You know, dealing with the issue, you know, from the bike change, that definitely took a little bit of wind out of his sails. But again, as soon as he was back on it, he was building and building and building. Now looking like he's going to be well over 50 seconds for the next time through when they get the bell.
Now, they've been holding this event known as Jingle Cross here in Iowa City for the last dozen years. For the last two, it's been a UCI World Cup event. And next week, all of these riders move on to a first-time World Cup venue in Waterloo, Wisconsin. 1 week from today, the second stop of the 2017-18 Telenet UCI Cyclo-cross World Cup season. Always been a terrific event that has traditionally been held in either late November or early December, hence the Jingle Cross name, the Christmas theme with the Grinch that stole Christmas names for all of the features on the course. And now Mathieu van der Poel starting his next lap, and that's 2 to go for the Dutch run. Doesn't have a Christmas feel to the weather, certainly, as here we are still well over a month before Halloween. But the holidays are always getting extended every year. Sales at the mall and online seem to start around 4th of July. It's kind of crazy, but it's fit the community, the racer schedule, the World Cup campaign. All of the elements have come together to make this a perfect time of the season to come to this race in Iowa City and launch the new
for a rider like Van der Poel to do all three, it is a real puzzle that you have to put together. Wout van Aert also rides on the road. He has had great success, actually, you know, winning a prologue, getting the leader's jersey early in the season at one of the stage races there. But, you know, he's also dealing with, where do I put in my training? Where do I go for the big races? And how do I make it work? A lot of them, especially now, take small breaks throughout the year where they will drop out of the calendar, so to speak, and maybe take a rest and then try and build up again. When you are racing literally 12 months a year, it's something that you have to stay on top of, especially as a young rider.
They will race in Koksijde on October the 22nd. Also make stops in Denmark and Germany, 2 in Belgium in December. France and the Netherlands will be in January, and the World Championships will be held in early February in Valkenburg.
Steve, that'll be a home race for Van der Poel happening in the Netherlands on a course that, you know, honestly has a lot of similarities to what we're seeing today with Jingle Cross. A lot of elevation. We saw a little bit of a slip out there from Hermans, really going for that hard right-hand turn at the bottom of the descent. But back to Valkenburg, it's really tough. You know, it's a lot of elevation in a short period of time, and it has the sense that create moments where, you know, you see a rider just whip down with their foot out. You know, Lars van der Haar had some pretty exceptional descents, you know, the last couple of World Cups there. So having the World Championships is a big goal for the end of the season. If you are able to fight for those stripes and pull them on in your home country, it's really something special, especially for Van der Poel.
Hermans and Sweeck still just about 50 seconds back, and neither one of those riders has dropped the other, so it looks like it could come down to the final lap for those two to see who finishes in second and who winds up third. Looks like they're pretty safe to both be on the podium, however. Just a matter of who's one step higher.
Yeah, it looks like Sweeck taking a second to catch his breath a little bit. This corner into the stairs has been trouble for some of the riders earlier. You see both of these riders getting on and off their bike on different sides. Laurens Sweeck is a rider who gets off on the right-hand side, which is really the unnatural position for cyclocross. That's kind of something new in the last few years, where riders feel comfortable getting on and off on different sides. So you see the pit lane now has support staff on both sides. Definitely a little bit of a change, but you know, that battle right there, podium spot, you know, that is a solid result for any one of those riders. The other battle with Van der Haar and Powell, that is really a grudge match. They're just doing that to get ahead of the other, even though the podium isn't within sight.
1 lap to go. So Mathieu van der Poel, our leader, out onto his final lap with a sizable lead over these two, Quinten Hermans and Laurens Sweeck. Coming up on the 1 hour mark of the race, and Van der Poel looking to close out what would essentially be a wire-to-wire victory here in the World Cup opener in Iowa City. Sweeck ahead of Hermans as they start their final lap. 51 seconds behind the leader. So now for these two, how do you see it here on this final lap? Who wants it to come down to a sprint? Who wants to drop the other out on the course?
You know, I think the way that Sweeck took that front straight, he looked really strong. You know, he's definitely feeling confident in how he's going to be able to hit this last lap leading into this corner. He's got Hermans drafting, but I do see a lot more strength in Sweeck at this moment. Quinten Hermans, I don't think that he's got a sprint that would go up against that. Laurens Sweeck is a bit of a stronger rider. He's kind of known for that.
Boy, judging by that body movement, Van der Poel is not dialing the throttle back. He is still digging hard. A convincing afternoon for that young man. Mathieu van der Poel with Sweeck and Hermans just trying to stay somewhat within a reasonable amount of time, but really more focused on who's going to finish second ahead of the other.
Looks like Sweeck really has that gas pedal open. Hermans struggling to stay with him up there, trying to get some of that traction. This is going to be a real battle for those two going in. I think that they're going to hit the sand section and then follow through with this climb that Van der Poel, again, just makes look so easy. Swyk still leading, trying to maintain control of his own destiny. Leading through sand is always a good move. He's got a small gap on Ehrmans. He's definitely going to make him chase as they get up to this climb.
Mathieu Van der Poel, the world champion from 2015, two-time junior world champion, a junior road world champion from 2013 in Florence, Italy. And Van der Poel coming from a family of pro cyclists, a very rich cycling history. His brother David also prominent in cyclocross racing, winning the 2013 National Under-23 Championships in the Netherlands. His father, a six-time national champion and world champion in 1996, also a two-time stage winner at the Tour de France.
Well, you could consider Adrie Van der Poel to be a legend in the sport of cycling. He was a multi-sport rider, multidisciplinary rider, and his son here is really carrying that torch and flying it high. See Van der Poel coming into that final descent. But back to this battle for second and third. Looks like Swyk is kind of backed off a little bit at the top of the climb. Quentin Ehrmans looking like he's a little bit more comfortable at this point in the race. You know, he is a smaller rider. He's potentially a better climber, but Swyk looks like he is on great form and really wanted to make that climb work.
Mathieu Van der Poel has rarely seen his fellow competitors. Maybe on some of the pass-bys on the opposite side of the course, but certainly not even in the rear-view mirror. They've been so far back. Swyk ahead of Hermans, maybe opening up a gap here on the descent. The battle for second place behind Van der Poel. Now, Mathieu Van der Poel did not race here a year ago because of a knee injury. Missed a good portion of the early cyclocross campaign on the World Cup, but came back with a vengeance and about to start the new World Cup calendar on that same kind of hot streak. Hermans trying to pull up alongside Swyk in the battle for second. Well, Van der Poel with an emphatic performance today in Iowa City, getting set to ride into a solo victory.
That last uphill section just before the final descent, he is looking like he's got firm control of this race, but here's that battle for second. Quentin Ehrmans going around Lawrence Swyk into this upcoming stair section. He's gonna wanna hit this left-hand turn, keep it smooth, stay in that rut. He's gonna wanna get off and make these stairs work. Looks like Swyk battling back almost even as they get up and over. They have that very, very short, steep climb and then descent. We'll see if we'll have an attack by Swyk here. This ground, you can't really tell, but it is bumpy, very, very slick and very, very hard before they make this left-hand turn. We saw some of the other riders have issues going in, but here we go.
Now Hermans ahead of Swyk. But Mathieu Van der Poel is going to zip up the jersey and get ready to soak in the moment. The 22-year-old Dutch rider goes wire to wire and makes a huge statement, winning the opening race of the Cyclo-cross World Cup campaign today in Iowa City. And now Hermans and Swyk. What kind of a tactical game will they play here?
This is going to be a sprint, but it's going to start early. These riders are going to have to start to lead out from that final tough turn. It's very, very slick. Quentin Ehrmans leading in. If he gets on the gas too early and slips out, he's going to lose his chance. Swyk now standing up, going for it. He's going to make the move before the final right-hand turn onto that finish straight.
Swyk trying to make the pass on the right-hand side there. Here comes Lawrence Swyk into the sprint. from distance. Hermans can't hold the wheel, and it's going to be Lawrence Swake who finishes second. Quentin Hermans third to round out the podium. And then distant fourth and fifth place finishers coming in behind. Kevin Pauls of Belgium in fourth. And Lars van der Haar, who went down earlier in a crash, the Dutch rider, almost a minute behind our winner, is top 5 on the day nonetheless.
Not a bad way to salvage your race, getting all the way back up to 5th place, but that was a strong last lap by that duo, Pauls and van der Haar, getting that close to who we saw in second and third throughout the entire day. And here's Michael Van Toornhout, known for his early season exploits. He is always a perennial fighter for these races, so good ride for him in 6th position. We have Toon Aerts, European champion, trying to hold off that chasing group. Looks like it's going to be Boros and Vermeesh. Those riders sprinting all the way to the line again. Fast finishes here today, Steve.
Fast finishing, but 146 back of the winner. Needed that speed earlier in the race and throughout the 10 laps of competition today in Iowa City, Iowa. And one of the biggest stories is going to be how far behind our defending champion and reigning world champion is going to come in. And there he is, number 1 in the rainbow jersey. Wout van Aert, over 2 minutes back.
These riders really showing the signs of that heat. That's Gordon Van Kessel coming across the line, having those issues early on with Jim Arnoud's keeping Wout van Aert company. He's going to come across in 13th, and it will be 14th place for Wout van Aert. He was able to salvage 6 or 7 spots, you know, coming from when he came across the line in 19th, 20th in that group, now moving on up.
But 2.5 minutes back for the world champion. Not a good start for him on the 2017-18 Telenet UCI Cyclo-cross World Cup. Wout van Aert has a week to get things straightened out before the next World Cup race in Wisconsin a week from today.
Yeah, he'll be trying to think of what happened, you know, what were my issues, whether it was physical, mental, a bike issue, whatever it is. You know, any of these riders have to evaluate how they're approaching each race individually, how they're approaching the season. You know, he's a busy guy as world champion. There's a lot of obligations that come with that jersey. So he's definitely going to look for what can I do to make next week go better for me.
Steve Chanel coming up across the line next. Now riders now almost 4 minutes down.
It's going to be Stephen Hyde there, our U.S. national champion and the Pan Am champion. He's wearing that jersey today. Definitely a fan favorite. I think he was hoping for a better end result. He definitely rode, he rode at the front in those groups as they were kind of solidifying throughout the day, but coming across the line in 23rd position. Ian Field here, British national champion. You know, he is a familiar face to a lot of people in American cyclocross, starting off his season here quite a few times. Definitely knows his way around this country. Big finish here. We have Jeremy Powers and Elie Iserbyt, the Belgian rider. Those guys are going to come up. Looks like they've been riding together for most of the race, but Iserbyt's definitely going to take Powers, put him back into 27th position for Jeremy Powers.
Guys who most of the way were over half a lap down. Well, here at the race they call Jingle Cross. Not even the Grinch could steal the win from the most dominant rider of the day. Mathieu van der Poel wins the World Cup in Iowa City.
Taking another look here at that sprint. That's Swake getting in 2nd position, really pushing Ehrmans to the limit. He wasn't even able to respond. You know, I think we saw that being set up in the last couple of corners, but those two riders really doing everything they could to maintain that pace that would hopefully see them back on Van der Poel's wheel. Last was not to be, but at least it was enough to stay ahead of that very, very fast finish by Kevin Powles and Van der Haar in 4th and 5th.
And a lot of these riders will pack up, leave Iowa City, and move on to Wisconsin, wondering what it's going to take to beat 22-year-old Dutch winner Mathieu van der Poel. Didn't see him for most of the day. Once he got off the line, got that hole shot, he sprinted away to an early lead and kept building on that advantage throughout the day. So now the strategizing will begin, and they'll try to figure out in a week's time what it's going to take to try and be more competitive next Sunday in the second stop of the 2017-18 Telenet UCI Cyclo-cross World Cup. What do you think that formula is going to be?
Well, I think it's going to have to, you have to be trouble-free. You know, you have to look at it like, you know, I've got my result from today. We'll see how it goes next week. And the conditions from a race like today, hot, dry, fast, you know, some elevation that they're dealing with is so different from some of the flat, just mud that goes forever. You know, more traditional European cyclocross where they actually have running sections that last, you know, 30, 40 seconds, even a minute or two. You know, being a well-rounded rider is going to win you the World Cup. What we saw today is, I think, a perfect setup for that with Mathieu van der Poel. He has got every bit of skill to do that anywhere.
So you see the final results here in Iowa City. It is Mathieu van der Poel who gets the victory over Laurens Sweeck and Quinten Hermans, who are also on the podium. But an emphatic day to open up the World Cup campaign for the Dutch rider Mathieu van der Poel, who is victorious in the Midwest on a sunny day in Iowa. Now the party has been going on for the last 3 days, and it'll go on into the night here in Iowa City, as they have made this such a party, such a festival over the years, and having the race on a Sunday afternoon allowed them to have racing beginning on Friday. They raced under the lights Friday and Saturday nights. People have been out during the day and the evening and all day today to conclude it with the most prestigious racing of the 3-day stretch.
Yeah, and right what we saw there was at the top of Mount Crumpet, definitely the scene of the party for those night races. Crowd absolutely just covering that hillside. Really excited to see how today's worked out, and the fans definitely were treated to a show with Van der Poel.
And here is the winner, Mathieu van der Poel.
Dat is 2 op 2 voor jou, proficiat. Maar kan het nog gemakkelijker?
Het was afzien. Ik denk dat de warmte de grootste tegenstand was. In het begin viel dat goed mee, omdat je met koelvest naar de start was gereden. Maar het werd wel elke ronde warmer en warmer.
Je was ook meteen goed weg, hè?
Ja, dat was ja, onverwacht, zou ik niet zeggen. Maar ja, dat was wel een beetje de bedoeling hier om goed weg te zijn. Maar niet om zo snel alleen te komen zitten. Maar ik zag dat Tom Meeuwse gelijk in tweede positie was aan het afstoppen. Dus ja, dat gatje dat ik kreeg, kon ik moeilijk terug wel te dichtvallen.
Hoe lang ben je hier nu echt voluit moeten gaan?
Goh, ik heb wel, vooral toen ik even problemen met mijn ketting had en dat mijn derailleur een halve ronde kapot was. Het heeft wel veel kracht gekost om terug in mijn tempo te komen. Ja, het is toch een parcours dat je, ja, die bergjes, daar ga je automatisch voluit, daar kan je niet rustig op rijden.
En dan nu, op naar 3 op 3 in Waterloo?
Ja, daar gaan we voor natuurlijk. Conditie is zeker goed, dus proberen die aan te houden.
Dankjewel, Mathieu. In English too. Mathieu van der Poel, congratulations. That's 2 in a row, and that looked quite easy.
Maybe it looked that way, but it's a tough course, and especially with this heat, it's a struggle against yourself yeah, after a few laps.
How long did you have to go all out on this race?
Yeah, I think these climbs, you can't take them easy, but when I had some little problems with my chain, I think after that was the hardest part for me in the race, because I was in a good pace, but that interrupted it a little bit, and it was hard to get a good rhythm back.
And now Waterloo next week. Will that be 3 in a row for you?
I hope so. I'm looking forward to it. They told me it was very nice there, so yeah, I'm in good shape and I'm going to try and pull the 3 out of 3 off.
Thank you, congratulations.
Well, a note about what we saw as a mechanical in that pit area, Steve, was a problem with his chain. It was obviously not so bad that he couldn't continue for that next half lap, but watching him make that motion, you know, hey guys, I've got a problem. It's not catastrophic, but I'm going to need to come in.
Now that's part of the process in this sport, but we saw how quickly the bike change happened. He didn't seem to lose much time at all. It was essentially ditch the bike, they had the other one ready, stepped off and on to the next. As he gets the win today ahead of Lawrence Swake, who finished second. And now talking with the media.
Lawrence Swake, vrijdag winnen in een cross zonder Van Aert, Aerts en Van der Poel. Nu blijkt hier vandaag dat er eigenlijk maar eentje echte sterk is voor jou.
Ja, dat klopt. Ik denk dat hij wel echt veruit de beste was. Ik voelde wel in de tweede ronde dat ik precies iets rapper kon. En ik had precies de indruk dat Wout niet altijd een beste dag had. Ik denk dat dat ook gebleken is achteraf. En ja, ik dacht even dat Wout wel nog het gat ging, of toch bijna het ging terugkomen. Maar ja, ik had het gevoel dat ik rapper kon en dan ben ik gewoon mijn eigen tempo beginnen rijden. En ja, kon ik een gatje slagen op de rest. En ik was eigenlijk nog wel blij dat Quinte erbij kwam. Ik denk dat we met 2 direct ook samen hebben gereden voor dat podium. En ja, dat was mooi. Dat gaf ons alle 2 een mooie ereplaats.
Ja, je zegt het al, Quinten was de ideale compagnon voor jou vandaag.
Ja, inderdaad. Hij was vrijdag ook al sterk. Toen was hem ook tweede. Dus ja, het is toch gebleken dat we dan vrijdag ook op een hoog niveau hebben rondgereden, denk ik. En ja, ik ben blij dat ik vrijdag die overwinning gepakt heb en dat ik nu een plaatsje beter doe als vorig jaar.
Hoe heeft hij het in jouw parten gespeeld vandaag eigenlijk?
Ja, ik heb het op het einde begon ik het echt wel te voelen. Ik had zonder drinkbus gereden en dat was eigenlijk een foute keuze. Maar ik dacht dat het wel iets kouder was, maar met dat de zon er was doorgekomen was het ineens toch een pak warmer. En ja, ik heb al een paar liter uit nu.
En jij gaat nu als enige naar Las Vegas. Is dat puur om punten te pakken?
Ja, ook een beetje. En ja, het zal dan misschien iets gemakkelijker zijn voor punten. En ja, een overwinning erbij, dat is altijd mooi. Dus ik ga daar toch proberen voor de winst te rijden.
Nog eens proficiat en hartelijk bedankt. En ja, Quinten Hermans, wat een fantastische race was dat voor jou. Hoe heb jij die beleefd?
Ja, het was heel erg lastig, maar ja, het was gewoon fantastisch. Ik voelde dat vrijdag mijn vorm heel goed was, maar ik had dit eigenlijk echt niet verwacht.
Ja, ik wou het je vragen, hoe hard heeft het je geholpen dat je hier vrijdagavond ook al hebt gereden?
Toch wel goed, denk ik. Ik heb altijd wel een beetje nodig dat ik er moet inkomen. En ja, vrijdag was de perfecte voorbereiding, denk ik. Dat was de eerste keer dat je echt super diep gaat hier. En dat had je wel nodig, denk ik, voor vandaag in topvorm te zijn.
Mathieu van der Poel die stak er met kop en schouders bovenuit. Of had jij toch ooit de indruk dat je die nog te pakken ging kunnen krijgen?
Misschien 10 seconden, maar dat was ook echt alles. Nee. Ik heb even geprobeerd terug te rijden, maar hij reed gewoon zo snel. En nee, dat kan ik gewoon niet volgen. En ook die bochtentechniek, dat is gewoon fantastisch hoe dat die door de bochten gaat. Nee, dat kan ik gewoon niet aanpikken. En ik had met Laurens de perfecte compagnon om met 2 voor het podium te gaan.
Dit belooft wel voor jou, hè? Als jij dit de rest van het seizoen kan volhouden, deze vorm?
Ja, dat is waar, maar ik ben al blij met deze 3e plaats. En laten we zien wat volgende week gebeurt. En dan gewoon zo verder blijven werken. En ik ben al heel blij dat ik dit heb kunnen doen.
Dikke proficiat, dankjewel.
Lawrence Swake and Quentin Hermans, 2 of 6 Belgians in the top 10 today. And they rode together for just about the entire race. Finally, Swake out sprinting Hermans right at the line to take 2nd place on the day.
And that was a big result for Hermans. You could see that in the interview. I pick up every 20th word in Flemish, but it was a great result for him to land on the podium. Lawrence Wake definitely has had more of those results in years past, and I think that he really did expect to at least do battle to try and get on the podium with someone like Wout van Aert. But Hermans very happy to get there in 3rd.
19 Belgians altogether in the field today, 17 Americans, and 55 total riders from 11 different countries in this first race of the World Cup season.
And something also to note is, the Australian rider Gary Milburn. He's new to the American World Cup scene. He does travel quite a bit to go to the other races. We see Masaru from Japan, an Estonian out there racing as well. But I think getting more of those other countries. We've barely had any French riders out here. Swiss riders. That true World Cup field is still a little bit of ways, but hopefully we can get more of those riders to compete for these 2 races here in the U.S.
So there is the podium in the first men's race of the World Cup season. Mathieu van der Poel leading the way ahead of Lawrence Swake in second and Quentin Hermans in third. And now it's off to Waterloo, Wisconsin, just outside of Madison for the next race on the World Cup campaign 1 week from today.
Jersey.
And now the World Cup leaders jersey for the winner, Van der Poel.
Excuse me, Steve. He's getting that from Jeff Proctor, who's really a big member of the community that has built this U.S. cyclocross scene, often looking to give riders opportunities to race at this particular level in Europe, and it's great to see him out there giving that jersey to the race leader, Mathieu van der Poel.
Huge crowd on a sunny, very pleasant day in the American heartland. And there is the final podium once again. And now for Tim Johnson, I'm Steve Schlanger. Mathieu van der Poel getting the victory, and now the national anthem for the Netherlands. Best hair in the field today, belonging to the best rider. Mathieu van der Poel covers it up with the hat. And one more look at your podium. Van der Poel, Swake, and Hermans.
And now a champagne celebration.
So the big crowd that has stuck around on what is a warm day will get cooled off with a little bubbly. Well, the second, third place guys, I never really know how much they enjoy the champagne shower. You always wanted to win, so you're a little bit frustrated, and then you get hit with the champagne, sometimes right in the face.
It's kind of worth the stinging eyes, because you know that you're only getting that because you were on the podium.
Once again, Mathieu van der Poel gets the win. 1 down, 8 to go in the World Cup season. We will talk to you next week, just outside of Madison in Waterloo, Wisconsin. That closes things out for this first event of the 2017-18 Telenet UCI Cyclo-cross World Cup. And once again, for Tim Johnson, I'm Steve Schlanger. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and so long from Iowa City.
Poel.